Thank you, Madam President. In 25 days, the cost of attending college, a trade school, a university, a two-year community college, will increase for some 380,000 students in my state of Ohio. It's because without congressional action, something we have tried, which we have tried to fix repeatedly on the floor of the United States Senate, without congressional action, interest rates for Stafford loans are scheduled to double on July 1st. Now, this was done 5 years ago bipartisanly. We were able to do this, but President Bush signed legislation for a Democratic Congress, a Democratic House, Democratic Senate to freeze interest rates on Stafford subsidized loans for American college students for 5 years at 3.4%. That expires July 1st, and it's something that we need to do. We've tried to do. It's repeatedly been batted down by threats of a filibuster. That's why today I met with students in Toledo at Owens Community College. Jackie, CJ, and Megan all have dreams to attend first Owens, then move on to four-year institutions, but they rely on Stafford loans to afford their tuition and other expenses. I've been to Cuyahoga County Community College meeting with students, been to Hiram College, visiting students there on their graduation day, been it's in Cincinnati, the University of Cincinnati, been to Ohio State, been to Wright State University in Dayton speaking to students. They understand if we don't act, then future college graduates will see an average of about $1,000 in extra interest fees per student, per Stafford student loan. My colleague, Senator Jack Reed, and Senator from Rhode Island, Senator Harkin, and I have introduced the Stop the Student Loan Interest Rate Hike, which would keep college affordable for more students. The act is fully paid for by closing a corporate tax loophole. We want to pay for this. We don't want to add this to debt for college students. We don't want to add to their personal debt by allowing this 3.4% interest rates to double. I would like to make this more personal, if I could, Mr. President, and read some letters from students in Ohio schools, students and families. It affects the student personally, of course, these higher interest rates. It also affects the family. It also, who are helping pay for this college tuition in many cases. It also affects the community. We know by going back to the 1940s and 50s and 60s and 70s, the GI Bill sent literally enabled literally millions of college students, millions of young Americans who had fought for their country in World War II or Korea or successive military involvement, to allow them to go to school and to afford their college tuition. What that meant, Madam President, was not just helping those students and their families. It helped raise the level of prosperity for the entire country, because those were students that came, those were people that got to go to school. It meant that they could start businesses and buy homes and get better jobs and give back a lot to our communities. That's the same thing that will happen if we can lock these interest rates, 3.4% interest rates in. It will mean students who might not have been able to buy a car, or might not have been able to start a business, or might have been more reluctant to start a family, that they are less likely to do that if we can't lock these interest rates in. So, Madam President, before turning over to Senator Inhofe, I'd like to share 3 letters that my office received recently, starting with Casey from Union in Miami County, Ohio. Miami County is just north of Dayton. Going to college was not a question for me. There was an unspoken understanding that would happen. Unfortunately, my parents couldn't afford to pay for all of their children, particularly after we faced foreclosure in 2007. I faced responsibility at age 17 for covering the $10,000 per year gap of paying for George Washington University. Over the past 4 years, I've taken out the maximum allowed in student loans, subsidized and unsubsidized. I've held a federal work-study job since October of my freshman year. Because both of my parents were unemployed at the time, I was forced to take out PLUS loans. This left me with a gap. I had to ask my parents to spend a significant portion of their retirement fund to allow me to finish my degree. At 21 years old, I have $42,000 in loans to repay. I've received a world-class education thanks to the opportunities provided to me by my scholarships, by student loans, by Pell Grants, by work-study programs. Students should not be punished for following the American dream. There's a huge emphasis on the importance of education, but the soaring costs of private and public universities is making it harder and harder for my generation. Doubling the interest rates on loans is not the solution. Making education harder to pay for will shut doors for students like me, and college will inch back toward being a privilege for the wealthy. I've worked part-time since I was 15. I did well in high school. I was to win a scholarship. I maintained my grades in college. To keep that scholarship, I've taken advantage of work-study programs. I have every intention of paying back my student loans in full as I enter the world of full-time employment. Please don't make it harder to pursue the American dream. Wayland from Fairborn, Greene County, near Springfield, the city of Xenia, is nearby outside of Dayton. I'm deeply concerned about the thought of an increase in student loan interest. I'm currently a student at Antioch University Midwest taking classes to pursue my license to become an intervention specialist. I have 2 children who are finishing up their sophomore years in college at the end of May. My sons have, as I do, have student loan debt, and an increase in the rates would have a diminishing effect on affording an already higher tuition rate at the college itself. Hasn't it been a big push for people in our country to become more educated, equating to a more successful and competitive country? How will this ever be obtained without affordable education? Gaining higher, more competitively paying jobs would also equate to more taxes being paid. Isn't that what we should be looking at? I believe there's a disconnect between what people in Washington want, a more educated country, and how they're willing to get it. And Sarah, also from Dayton, writes, I started college in 2003. As a foster youth, fresh from emancipation, I took out student loans because I don't have any family that can help me pay for college. 9 years, 2 Bachelor of Arts degrees, 1 in criminal justice, the other in education, and an almost complete Master of Arts degree. Not only am I $100,000 in debt, I'm still unable to find a job. Since I'm overqualified for jobs at places like McDonald's, who take one look at my application and reject it, and underqualified for positions using either of my degrees, I'm forced to look outside of Ohio for jobs that will allow me to at least use my 1 to 2 years of secretary experience so that I have a salary to start paying on these loans. My student loans hinder not only my ability to possibly finish my master's degree, but also to potentially purchase a home and find a position near my family. When I'll graduate, I'll not be able to move back home since my parents, so I will find a position outside what I went to school for, and probably for minimum salary or even minimum wage, just so I do not end up homeless. I may have to look overseas to find work. I have hopes the government will see stories like mine from people who have risen above their circumstances, are unable to go to college to make their lives better, and not just be statistics and actually do something to help us. Madam President, I think these stories obviously speak for themselves. We are leaving our children, we're certainly leaving them with far too much debt. 10 years ago, we had a budget surplus until this government, the House and Senate, and the President in the last decade made terrible mistakes and blew a hole in the federal budget. We don't want to leave them increased debt for student loans, because when I graduated from college 35 years ago and my wife graduated, my wife was first in her family to go to college, to Kent State University. She graduated with almost no debt. And even though her family wasn't really able to help her much because state government was more involved, federal government was more involved, and tuition was lower. And it's a moral question to me to make sure we can freeze these interest rates. We have no business saddling more debt, a more onerous debt burden on the young men and women in our country.